All right. Talking about the papers, we just look, just like I said, a couple of the papers. Let's start from the Punch headlines. New Year. Tackled economic hardship. Nigerians tells federal government. And Atiku, manufacturers, exports lament economic crisis. Want federal government to tame inflation. I am aware of Nigerian pains, difficult decisions taken to avert economic disaster. That's from the president. And of course, fireworks, pictures of people in the UAE, in Russia, in China as well. By the way, countries like, at least like Australia, they really seeing what is in 2024 beyond those hours ahead. Celebrations as world welcomes 2024. Traders count losses as police demolish computer village, power complex. 4504 medical laboratory scientists left Nigeria 2023. That's according to the registrar. UN 6 end to wars in 2024. And Port Harcourt refinery begins test run. 12 states get supply soon. Okay. Nigeria borrowed $1.7 billion to boost forex inflows. MBS, that's Bureau Statistics. And finally, Plateau, Pope seeks divine help as military comes remote communities. And it's very sad to note again that in the middle of what happened at the Christmas Eve, there was still an attack in Plateau State. Why all these things? You could just imagine how audacious are these people, really? Who are they? Many persons have been visiting, from the vice president to the service chiefs, and there were still some communities that were still attacked. We need to do more as a nation, Evelyn.
Yes, we need to do more, Femi, and this reminds me of what Mr. D.M. Isaka said when we had him earlier on the show. You know, last year, 2023.
Yeah, that's right.
It said that it's a pattern, and if only the people at the intelligence unit, the CTU, the counterterrorism unit, and the NSA will actually pay attention to this pattern of how these people operate, they should know that they will come back to strike. And, you know, he mentioned it that day that he's not a prophet of doom, but it's already a pattern. It happened in 2010. They actually attacked on the eve of Christmas and attacked December 31st on the eve of New Year. So it's possible that they will attack. And I thought that the NSA, the National Security Advisor to the President, and also those in the intelligence unit, the DSS, should have paid attention to that.
Because there's a pattern. That's obviously a pattern.
Yes, and like we always say, the primary duty, responsibility of government is to secure lives and property.
That's right.
If you're failing in that, you have failed woefully. And we hope that this 2024, they will, the people in leadership will actually put stratagems in place to ensure that they secure lives and property as much as they can. We move over to the Guardian newspaper at this time. And on the Guardian newspaper, we have the Happy New Year greeting there from the Guardian newspaper with some fireworks by the side. I'm not sure you can see, but I can see that right here. So 2024, Nigerians hopeful amid failed promises on lingering problems. That's on page 6. And Nigeria in 2024. We have the energy sector, refinery, the stock market, port. We have also the currency, inflation, manufacturing, labor. Looking at the projections for 2024 in these sectors. Away from that, NPAN announces changes in newspapers' cover prices. We are likely to get a surge of the prices for the prices of newspapers all around the country at this time. All right, moving on. Ogun community protests alleged forced acquisition of land by Chinese. Ogun community protests alleged forced acquisition land by Chinese. Registrar confirms emigration of 10,697 medical laboratory scientists. People are still moving out in droves. Despite budget surge, poor funding still awaits education in 2024. Tackle corruption, insecurity in 2024. Bishops tell FJ. It's not just the bishops that are talking to the federal government. Everyone is talking to the federal government at this time because, you know, corruption, insecurity, if these two can be solved and brought to the barest minimum, we will have a boom in our economy, we will have a boom in our nation. Away from that, Fresh Plateau attacks claim 6 lives in Mangu, Bokos local government areas. One thing that is striking is the fact that it is still the same LGAs, the attacks that claimed over 190 lives on the eve of Christmas 2023. It was in Bokos and Barakin Ladi local government area, also in Mangu local government area. And we have Fresh Plateau attacks in these local government areas. One may want to ask, what is the purpose of these insurgents, of these attackers? Why are they attacking at this time? Some people are saying it has to do with land grabbing. Whatever it is, I hope the people, the necessary agency, will actually pay attention and be able to bring out what they need to bring out and address the situation head on. Away from that, why 2024 budget was increased by 1.27 trillion naira. Get more details of that on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Times are rough, but we must keep hope alive. Yeah. Tinubu charges Nigerians. And that will be all for the Guardian newspaper.
All right, from the Guardian to the Punch as well. It's all about one message. Nigerians want to just live a normal life, a happy life, a secured life. Actually, we just talked about the attack on Plateau again. The obvious evidence that even an analyst on this program, people who are in that sector, knows that there is a possibility of something happening. Again. Because this is not a one-off, that it has always been like that. Towards the Yulita, towards the end of the year, those marauders will come and do that. And part of what we have been seeing so far is that we've not really been able to see an arrest being made and prosecution being made. It's like we are just making conjectures. Who are they? They speak a particular language. They come in from outside the fringes of our nation. They wreak this havoc and they go back. For years, you mean we couldn't arrest 10 persons and scores of people have died, almost 200 in the last attack. Yes. And then this one, even if it's a life, it really matters. And people just want to be happy. People just want to live. We're not asking for too much as a nation, you know. It's just to be able to be alive and take care of themselves. People are not even waiting for the government to feed them.
Do you think
they want to work?
Just give us an environment
that is safe.
A safe environment.
Farmers want to go to farm. You know, many persons have said, you know, this is like we are playing with, and it's obvious, with food scarcity, with food shortage.
I think we had the highest last year food shortage. There were predictions that we were going to have a surge of food shortage last year, and we did have that. And people are also projecting for 2024. I hope we can do things right and we can get our security in place so that our farmers will be safe to go back to the farms and we can have
Benue, Taraba, Plateau, all those states, Kaduna.
We have arable farms. We have arable lands in Nigeria. All we need is just security. These people are already scared. Some of them even pay levies to this bandits and insurgents as high as millions. It's not levies of thousands. You know, you hear them. We were asked to give them 5 million.
And if they don't do that,
it's just for 3 months.
They attacked.
Renewable levies. I mean, a state within a state.
Yeah.
If there's anything we should be shameful of, this is one of them.
It's that particular one. But then this is 2024. We are starting on a clean slate. We hope everybody that have something to do at all levels will do what they have to do. And if they don't, there should be consequences. And if they are doing it well, there should be reward as well. We'll go on a break right now. When we come back, we'll look at the economy and the budget, especially that has been passed by the National Assembly and the way forward for 2024. Once again, Happy New Year. We will be back. All right, you're welcome back. And the conversation, just like I said earlier, It's about the appropriation bill that has been passed by the National Assembly, the Joint National Assembly. And of course, we'll be looking into that because that is the policy direction of the government, financial policy direction of the government, by the way. And many persons knows the importance of the budget. 27.5 or thereabout trillion naira was what was passed, was sent to the National Assembly, by the way, by the president. And after, you know, the Senate, the House of Reps, the joint committees, you know, did their work, the Senate passed it, the 2024 budget, and raised it, the appropriation, by 1.2 trillion naira, taking it from 27.5 trillion naira to 28.7 trillion naira. The budget was passed following a voice vote by the Senate President, and who is the chairman of the National Assembly, Godswill Akpabio. Before then, the Senate had considered the report of the appropriation bill presented by the chairman of the Appropriation Committee, Senator Adeola Solomon. So the Senate pegged the aggregate expenditure, you know, 28 trillion naira, 777 billion naira, 404 million naira, 0.861. We look into those details, and we are being joined right now by Mr. Samuel Atiko. He is a policy and he is a strategy person as well. By the way, he is into this, and he's a university lecturer as well from the University of Bristol. Mr. Samuel Atiko, Happy New Year. Good morning.
Happy New Year. Thank you for having me on the program.
Thank you very much. We are very happy that you could join us this morning as the first day of the year. How is the UK today?
Well, I mean, it's the new year, so it's cold. I think we have great expectation for the year. So,
all right.
Certainly, it's the celebration since the early hours of the morning, fireworks. But aside from that, I think everybody's just staying indoors now because of the cold.
All right, fair enough. You are a research policy advisor and program manager, and of course, a university lecturer. And of course, the last time I checked, you're in Nigeria.
Yes, of course. Yeah, Nigeria remains.
Yeah.
Nigeria remains my primary constituency.
That's
yeah, and then we all want it to work.
Yes, of course, and that's the essence of having this program. Now, the Senate has passed the 2024 appropriation bill, the budget, and raised it by 1.2 trillion naira. We'll look into the details very shortly. Aggregate expenditure, 28 trillion naira, 28.7 statutory transfers, in excess of 1 trillion naira. Recorded expenditure, like 8 trillion naira as well. Capital expenditure is there, some of these figures. And of course, these are some of the figures we are seeing right now. What do you make, you know, on the surface, these things that we are seeing that has been passed by the National Assembly? What do you make of what the kind of job, let's start from there, the kind of job done by the National Assembly, thorough enough, they gave a date and said by December 30th, they are going to pass it into law. But many persons were concerned, is it about the speed? Is it about the thorough work done by different committees on this matter? What do you make of the old budget passage by the National Assembly?
I think we need to look at both sides of the coin. I think the first thing is, number one, you want to maintain the January to December calendar year to ensure that things align, so we don't go back to the past where the budget is passed in the middle of the year, giving the president, I'll call it, free will to spend without necessary accountability. In quote, anyway, because the system that have been put on ground, there are oversight, I'll call it, and control measures that the Constitution and MBC that are put on ground to ensure that the president does not go overboard. So in terms of the fact that the budget will be coming online, before the fiscal year starts deeply, I think you can look at that and say, yes, that's good. And it's good because of many factors. One, it allows businesses to look at the budgets and plan. Number two, it gives you a clear direction where the government is going. So people like contractors, people that depend on government for support, or they depend on government as, we all depend on government one way or the other. But for people that look closely at the numbers, they can efficiently set in motion their plans of action. You can look at the construction industry, you can look at, for instance, the health systems, you can look at the education sector, you can look at virtually all the sectors. And if you look at the subsectors also, so it allows you to look closely at the year and say, okay, these are things that we have seen will happen, and then you begin to make informed decisions based on that. On the other side of things also, it's important to remember that before the budget was presented by the president, a pre-budget statement was submitted. And that pre-budget statement, what we call the medium-term expenditure framework. It lays out the guiding principle of the budget. The Senate had looked at it and then they revised it. And based on that revision, the budget was prepared. Now, when the budget was submitted, what you see happening again is that the National Assembly is revising what they've revised. For instance, raising the threshold. For instance, when the budget was presented, we were envisaging that the exchange rate would be 750 naira to $1. That's been revised to 800. The second concept is that when the pre-budget statement was being revised by the Senate, the projections in terms of the revenue from the government-owned enterprise were set in stone. Now, during the budget process, the National Assembly had gone back to revise what they've revised. And that raised a lot of questions. Are we saying that the pre-budget statement, the exercise that happened before the budget was prepared, was not really thought through? That's one. Number two, are we saying that the National Assembly has the capabilities and the capacity to project and do the projection that the budget officer has done, and then they compare their projections with the projections of the budget office and say, no, the budget office is wrong, we are correct? I don't think so. I don't think the National Assembly budget and research unit is strong enough to do that. So what we see technically and what we've seen over the years is the ship and shut up concept. And the outcomes are always not good. If you remember, the last president did complain a lot about some of these things. For instance, saying that, you are amending the budget anyhow, you are introducing projects that have no project. that have no prospect and all those kind of things. So those are the big question marks that we need to actually unpack.
All right. Are you still with us?
Yes, I am. I'm hearing you clearly.
All right. Yeah. And, where you ended it, I remember what became popular, a particular parlance called budget padding, especially by the last administration. That's the introduction of suspicious projects and many things into the budget that was not there originally and that couldn't be explained for during the last administration. Now, looking at what it is, aggregate expenditure, excess of 28 trillion naira, statutory transfers, excess of 1 trillion naira, recurrent expenditure, 8.7 trillion naira, capital expenditure, 9.95. On the surface, for laymen like us, you see recurrent expenditure being 8.7, capital expenditure 9.9, and you feel this is too close just to pay salaries, just to run government, just to do one thing or another that has to do with, making life easy, remuneration, 8.7, and then capital expenditure, 9.9. How do you see that?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky place. Remember, the recurrent expenditure does not talk only about the salaries of workers. We can look at it closely and see how much of the recurrent expenditure goes to paying salaries and remuneration of workers.
Yeah.
We know that things like non-regular allowance also fit into this thing. Estaco for government official. We know how people were talking about COP, right? COP, and then the fact that a lot of people traveled outside the country. And we know that comes with a lot of benefits. So yes, you raise those big questions. But I think it's important to lay it out and compare with what the president has submitted. If you look at what the president submitted, the recurrent expenditure was 9.92 trillion. It tends to have been reduced to 8.76. So if you look at that, you can say, oh, that's a positive light, right? But it's important for us to think through what was reduced. I think until we see the fine details of the budget, we can now say we're drawing conclusions. On the flip side, also, the capital expenditure when the president presented the budget was 7.72, if I'm correct. It's been raised up to 9.9, about 9.99 trillion now. Now, there are big questions around that. The question is that can the National Assembly unilaterally introduce a new project? How did you cause the project? That's another big question. Now, if you are costing the project, have you done your bill of quantity to ascertain, have you done your visibility study to ascertain whether this project can come to light this year? Now, what we've seen historically in Nigeria is from, at least I know, looking at the budget from 2008 up to 2022, is the fact that when National Assembly introduced projects, the executive most times ignore those projects because they come up with different excuses for this. And that means that the budget doesn't, I mean, the performance of the budget is poor, what public finance experts call low budget credibility, that the budget comes out as being extremely low in terms of how people perceive it. And that helps, and that one way or the other exacerbates the mistrust that community that this project would have come out of, right? The mistrust they have in government. So my take here is that I think it's too early for us to say this is bad. What the National Assembly have done is bad until we see the details of the budget. But mere looking at the budget as it were in terms of the structure, we've seen some adjustments. I would say required expenditure going down, capital expenditure coming up, and then by extension also, we have the big question mark, statutory transfers. Statutory transfer is where you have the funds that goes to the National Assembly. That has gone up from about 1.38 trillion to over 1.7 trillion. And that's a big red flag for us because that means that the legislators, I mean, will be getting more, maybe they will be getting more allocation. Maybe we are going to pull in more allocation to the judiciary. Remember, most of them don't really, they are not transparent around how they pull out their budgets.
All right, and you know, let's, for the want of time now, we'll look into some sectors, by the way, and let's start from the Ministry of Defense. Defense is really a thing, especially what has happened in the last few days. And it's not just the incident in Plateau or on the Plateau alone. Many things has happened, especially in the 2023, that last year, that many security breaches, people losing their lives, many pictures and videos that are very gory, very hard to look at just because some persons decide to come and inflict pains on others. And it appears like they are never caught. None of them are being caught, especially with what happened on the Plateau. Villages being ransacked for almost 2 days. From one point to another, they did it with such bravery and bravado. And all we've been hearing since then is we will chase after them, we will do what we have to do. Police are talking, the security chiefs are talking. The vice president was there. The governor appeared helpless because it doesn't control the security architecture in that particular state. Now, looking at defense, we must be alive, Mr. Atiku. It's people that are alive that can go to school, that can go to banks, that can work, that can have infrastructures. We must keep ourselves and the nation safe, firstly. And as proposed in the budget, the total budget is 1.58 trillion naira. You know, a recurrent expenditure 1.27, capital expenditure 308.24 billion. The total capital project is 304, and then some of their projects that are in this proposal: purchase of arms and ammunition for the Ministry of Defense headquarters, additional payment for procurement of quantity 6x T, many of those things, MGS, small arms for the Nigerian Army. Let's look into the budget for the Ministry of Defense. Is it adequate enough?
I mean, it's one of the biggest challenge that Nigeria is facing. For the size of the country, and understanding that the responsibility of security and defense, sits squarely at the feet of the, I'll call it the federal government.
Yeah.
What you see state government doing is in terms of putting in funds is more like support. Now, the question is that, is the federal government equipped enough to actually secure the villages, the rural communities? I don't think so. I think the fund, in fact, if you budget 10 trillion for security in Nigeria, I don't think it's adequate. That's the big one that we need to talk about. But that said, the funds that we have already for security, and then if you understand it, if you look closely at the numbers, heavily over the years on security, and then people raise big question around the accountability of this fund. I recall in 2013, 2014, then 2015 and 16 also, we have civil society. I personally did write a lot of FOI to the Ministry of Defense, asking them about, I was trying to actually understand how funds have been used in the past, because you have a lot of noise around members of the security. I mean, don't let me go deep into that. People were complaining heavily about their remuneration, they're not receiving enough remuneration, that they are ill-equipped and all those kind of things. So to ascertain whether we have an efficiency problem or whether we have an allocation problem, we're trying to ask, but everybody tends to blank you off. And people say, oh yeah, it's a security concept, FY, people can always say, oh, it's security as such. There's limited transparency around that, but we know how it operates in the world. We know what the defense budget of the United States looks like. We know what the defense budget of the US, of the United Kingdom looks like. We know what they're investing in. But when you look closely at Nigeria, there's no transparency in that space. The funds that we are plowing into it, maybe we are not spending efficiently, and that's why we're getting this kind of result. But overall, I must say that the budget for security is not adequate. And that's why people that have been calling for state police, people that have been calling for community police, they have a good point, because, if you look at it, how much Nigeria spend on defense, I don't think it's enough to even man the communities. I mean, how many of us have policemen manning our communities? Most of our streets are empty, and nobody mans it. And that's why people resort to using vigilantes, employing private security apparatus to actually protect them. That's on one side. On the other side of it also, we need to understand also that the biggest chunk of Nigerian security architecture is used to protect the rich and then to protect some facility. I think at some point in time, about 25% of the Nigerian police force are actually attached to private individuals. Those are big question marks that we need to raise. So essentially, it's the poor that is actually paying the brunt of insecurity. Of course, the poor that actually face the brunt of insecurity. And unfortunately, we are also, one way or the other, subsidizing the rich to keep them rich, to keep them protected. So a lot of work needs to be happen within the security systems in Nigeria to actually get things going. And it's important to mention there's a contextual difference between defense and security. Security is prevention of harm, investigation, policing, and all those kind of. Defense is a response action, maybe protecting your community, protecting the country as it were. So if we begin to even delineate that and look at security as separately from defense, then we begin to ask even harder questions about ourselves. How much we are spending is not adequate.
All right. It's good to note, by the way, Mrs. Atiku, that everything boils down to security. We have to first, just like I said, to be alive and make sure we are in a peaceful environment for anybody to go ahead with whatever they want to go through. 1.58 trillion naira out of 28 trillion naira, it's one conversation, and as we are having it now, either is enough or not. And the usage, even of the fund, is good to know that you mentioned accountability. So all the funds that have been released in the past, are they being utilized for what they are meant for? That is it. We go to education now.
All right, Mr. Atiku, thank you for your insightful contribution since the start of the show. Let's move to the Federal Ministry of Education. with the total budget put at 1.44 trillion naira, the recurrent expenditure with 1.11 trillion naira, and the capital expenditure with 330.36 billion naira. This ministry is headed by Professor Tahir Mamman. I just want to get your overview of, what you feel about this budget for education, as we know that education is the bedrock for development of any country. Do you think this amount, 1.44 trillion naira budgeted for education this year 2024, is number one, feasible, and is it enough?
I think the first thing is that the budget for education is not enough. I think we've said that more time than not. I mean, and I can lay it out. Let's look at it this way. A lot of people in Nigeria will be leaving secondary school. Remember, we have a very youthful population. Now, when you step out of secondary school, what happens to you in Nigeria? You have two paths. Seek out and join, I would say, you look at to get into the university system, whether it's the private university system or the public university system, or you get into the polytechnic or the college of education. If you can't get into those three places, the alternative for you is to go into vocational education. And we know that certainly, I mean, everybody knows in the country that if you want to become a fashion designer, there's no school that is funded by government that can give you that. If you want to be a mechanic, there's no school that you can go to that will give you that. And you can go on and on like that. Now, when you delineate that into two, the volume of people looking to enter into the university system, I think for this year it's roughly about 4 million. The spaces that they will fill in is less than 10%. And I recall that the Minister of Education, way back in 2005, 2005, under the Obasanjo administration, complained that we will have a population the size of the United Kingdom that will have entered university, become skilled labor, become skilled people. Because of failure to invest in education, this entire population will have been wasted. That has happened. And unfortunately, we are not taking concerted effort to correct that. That's the first big problem. The second problem, if you can't get into university, what do? You go into the informal economy to go and learn one trade or begin to actually drive Okada on. I mean, it's a little messy. And that's why we have complained repeatedly that the government needs to sit down and begin to design programs to help young people gain the required skill to power this economy. Where do you go and learn how to lay out? No place in Nigeria. And then the third bit of it is that how do you bring the two together? There's dignity in labor. For instance, I can give a good example. In the UK, once you finish your GCSE, make that you finish your secondary school, there are different pathways for you. One, you can decide to go through the channel of going through formal education, go and take your A-levels, get into university. You can decide to go through the vocational line also, pick up what you call BTech concept. And then if you finish your BTech, you can come back and take a master's degree and come back into the academia, meaning that everything is all interwoven together. We've talked so much about this, but nothing seems to be happening. And that is even at the flip side of this. I just mentioned tertiary education. If you go to secondary education, it's a big ball of, I'll call it big ball of bomb to actually unpack there. And then if you look at the primary education also, very massive problems going on in there. And then when you look at even the young ones that are looking to get into school, there's very limited support. And that's why we've said 1 trillion naira, right? 2 trillion naira to do what?
1.4
That's one.
trillion.
My second point is that, remember, Nigeria is actually accumulating a lot of debt. This year's budget, we are going to most likely take about 10 trillion naira in terms of new borrowing. And if we want to be realistic, who will pay for that? Who will service that debt in future? Who will pay down that debt? There are these young people that we have refused to educate. And that's why I will say, I mean, clearly, that the budget that we put together for this, I mean, just imagine 27 trillion naira budget, and then we are putting in barely 2 trillion on education. And if you even dissect that, you go deep into what you have invested in, we begin to ask big questions. So my take here is that the allocation is not enough, and there are even big questions around the credibility around how we plan for the education system in Nigeria.
All right, Mr. Atiku, thank you so much. So the total capital project for education is put at 1,934, with new ones at 1,181. 1,181 new projects will be coming on board, and the ongoing ones 753. That's for the Ministry of Education. Mr. Atiku, I'd like to ask you, in the last administration, we had Mr. Adamu as the boss in charge of that ministry. And at the time, people said he was clueless as to what to do, the things to bring up in that particular ministry. Now we have Professor Taim Mamman at the helm of affairs in the Ministry of Education. My first question, do you think he is capable, going by his precedents, do you think he's capable to actually deliver on the mandate for the Ministry of Education? And also, you mentioned during your earlier explanation that we should have more of technical schools. I'm just paraphrasing now. We should have more of technical schools that will allow for people to go learn handiworks, and also when they come out of secondary school, they can be able to diversify instead of going straight into university. I'm sure you must have heard about of the dichotomy between the university degrees and the polytechnic degrees. When you go to polytechnic, you're seen as a second-class citizen, while the university degree holders are given preference when it comes to gaining jobs. Now, I'd like your take on that too.
Yeah, I think it's just in terms of the dichotomy between people that go to polytechnic and people that go to university. I think it's a Nigerian thing. Outside the country, I mean, my university, for instance, University of Bristol, one of the top-ranking universities, look at an HND person. They don't discriminate, right? You have an HND, you can get straight into a master's degree program, depending on the curriculum of course that you have taken. And that's why, again, over the years, from Obasanjo's tenure, 2002, 2003, we've been talking about how to remove this dichotomy, but we failed to do that. At a point in time, people were even suggesting that we even scrap the polytechnic system altogether and bury everything together into a university, but that failed to materialize. I mean, what do I say? I think it's a policy problem here. I think the problem about the government have not been sincere about how you actually remove those dichotomies. I think that's one key thing that to say. But outside the country, people technically do not even discriminate. I've seen people with HND that have gone into actually taking a PhD program directly, even without going through the master's system.
Amazing.
As long as your curriculum, as long as your what do you call it now, as long as the transcript of your education reflects what the university is looking out for, they push ahead with that.
All right.
Now, that's one. Number two, in terms of the competence of the people that have actually take leadership over maybe the Ministry of Education, I don't want to question people's competence. I know at the point in time, the former, I'll call it Minister of Education, said he had his own. He himself was quoted, or maybe, I don't know, I was seeing things on social media. I don't believe such anyway, that was saying that he did not know much about education. But a minister is just providing leadership. Within the Ministry of Education, you have permanent secretaries, you have directors. These are people that are civil servants, that they are trained to look at policies, to actually formulate policies and implement policies. That's two. Then number three also, there's a concept of participatory governance. Just looking at the show or your Ogun, I know a lot of civil society organizations working around the education system. Most of these people sit with government on a daily basis. Yeah. I mean, if you go to Abuja, you will see a lot of meetings happening in hotel rooms with government officials discussing about how to correct this thing. So even if you are clueless, the people around you, the communities around you the body of experts, I mean, you know, journalists, I mean, pick up newspapers, look at the news articles. People have written a lot about the education system, the ill in the education system. Yeah. And then people have made key recommendations on how to address it. So I think it's more of, I'll call it, a political will thing to actually carry along most of these reforms that people have talked about. And a lot of white papers, I can tell you that for free. There are a lot of white papers that have been submitted, a lot of position posts that have been pushed up, published. I remember my time, at least personally in the education sector, I personally have written over 8 papers that have been submitted to the Ministry of Education, especially around some of these topics. So there is no question of them not knowing about this thing. I think it's a question of having the political will to carry through some of these reforms.
All right. Quickly, of course, of the want of time, we'll go to health. These are critical sectors of our economy. You know, having standardized hospitals, either at the primary level, secondary, or the tertiary level, the maternities, the general hospitals, as we know them to be, the state hospitals, and of course, the teaching hospitals. One thing that bedeviled 2023 was the Japa syndrome, the knowledge economy trooping out. It was an exodus, and it's not looking like it's stopping soon because, in fact, there are hospitals that they've had some departments, some units of those hospitals closed down because there are no personnel to really man that. I think psychiatry in some hospitals, I think UTHC, and then there is LASUTH, that had to close down a particular unit that had 150 beds because nobody is there to man it again. And the situation is becoming very worrisome, if not really worse than that. Now, for the Ministry of Health, the total budget, as proposed, was 1.23 trillion naira. 1.23 trillion naira. Recurrent expenditure, 793 billion. Capital expenditure, 434. And of course, projects are listed, upgrade of some infrastructures. Now, Mr. Tiko will look at the infrastructure, the hospitals, not just hospitals, having a functioning, full furnished hospitals that have state-of-the-art facilities. How many of them can we get as it stands? Many persons thought the COVID, I personally, and many well-meaning Nigerians thought the COVID will really teach our leaders, the nation, on the importance of having equipped hospitals, because we saw many big guns, many big people running helter-skelter. Many of them died. We are not saying that's the reason why they died, but then we feel it should make us to look inwards and do better. But your guess is as good as mine. 1.2 trillion naira for health. That is the budget for 2034.
I think again, I mean, it's disheartening. I mean, a lot of people, they argue, so I'm sorry to digress a little bit. Before COVID, just like you said, we have struggled to actually make an economic case for improving the health and well-being of people. We knew that certainly you need an healthy workforce to power your economy along. But economics have struggled to do that connection. But we saw what the pandemic did. It grounded the entire world economy. That's why health is extremely very important. Now, when you look at across board, I mean, you mentioned something now. Health is a phantom of two things. One, the skilled work. Number two, you need the essential building and then the equipment. The place needs to be conditioned. I mean, I've worked in this country where disposal of people with shaking pox, when you treat them, the way materials that were used to actually treat people with shaking pox were disposed and caused pandemic within the community. That's how bad things are. Now, when you look at the budget, I mean, we all know this is not adequate, right? The first question we ask ourselves is that, where are we coming from? Where are we going in terms of actions? If you look at the personnel component of that budget, and you compare with what we have last year, there's no significant change. Meaning that the government has not made any concerted effort to say, yes, we are losing a lot of manpower. I mean, I can give you a good example, Ogun State, for instance. we did a survey, and then talking to the national president of the Ogun State Association of Nurses and Midwives. In the whole of the state, they have only 206 midwives manning primary healthcare centers. People could go and verify. We took, in fact, it took this woman putting her job on the line and standing in front of the key people, decision makers, to make an expression that this is wrong. Before government actually start making moves to recruit more people. We know, yes, a local government problem. But this is a big problem for us as a country. So the question is that a lot of these midwives, a lot of people that we've trained, a lot of doctors, they are finding that they are living every day. We are not, again, education, back to education. We are not drawing people we are not training more people to fill in their positions. That's one. The ones that are here already, that are saying, okay, let me stay, we are not doing anything to even try to retain them. And of course, we are human beings. We will run out. We have to cater for our family. How much is the salary of a doctor? We know doctors in this country that are earning 60,000 naira, earning 50,000 naira. How can you, as a human being, be earning 50,000, 60,000 as a doctor, and then somebody is offering you roughly about 4 billion naira in another country to come and live in another country? Your children get the best education. Why would you leave? And that's why people are leaving. So the question is that the government needs to look closely at this and take corrective measures. Unfortunately, looking at this budget, I've not seen direct concerted efforts that have been taken specifically to address some of these issues. I just talked about personnel. We can look at equipment also. What's 500 billion? Is it going to renovate our primary health care centers? Is it going to fix up, let's even assume that we are not dealing with primary, is it going to fix our tertiary health facilities? It's not going to happen. Yeah. That money is not adequate if you look at it on a dollar basis. In fact, if you rebase that money using the dollar rating, you will be so shocked that the money we are budgeting for health in 2015, 2014 is way higher than what we are budgeting today. Of course, we look at the naira and say, okay, because it's now looking like it's naira, it's better. No, it's not better. If you look at what that money can buy, it's getting bad and bad and bad. That's even true. The third component is also the fact that young people in this country die needlessly because of lack of immunization. I mean, routine immunization in Nigeria is arbitrary, right? People die because we can't spend 200, 300 naira on them to immunize them. There is vaccines, of course, to actually handle the issue of typhoid. We have a lot of vaccines that can prevent some of these. Young people, especially between the age of 0 and 5, they died needlessly in this country because we can't spend 200 naira on them to give them vaccines. I mean, so it's so sad when you see those things happening. And so what I would say is that, while yes, the budget itself in nominal terms seems to have increased, but government needs to do more in terms of actions that they need to take to address some of these key issues that we're seeing. I think I can get emotional when I talk about health system, because I know a lot of people that have lost their loved ones because of this thing. And it's so painful that when you see our politicians not taking actions to address some of these things, it's painful. And we have models that have worked even in Nigeria that we could actually adopt. Unfortunately, we're not paying close attention to that.
All right, Mr. Atiku, thank you so much. Everyone should actually be emotional when it comes to health. Really, but let's focus on another ministry that is germane to us as a country, the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Tourism, headed by Senator Abubakar Kyari there, and they have the total budget 362.94 billion naira, with the recurrent expenditure put at 110.25 billion naira, the capital expenditure 252.69 billion naira. 824 capital projects have been listed as what will happen this year. New ones 385, while the ongoing 439. Mr. Atiku, I like your take on this, because agriculture is one thing that also contributes to the progress and growth of any nation. But at the juncture that we are right now in Nigeria, we've seen a whole lot of situations actually come up against agriculture in Nigeria. Talk about the attacks in the different communities. I mean, we just had attacks in Plateau State, in 3 local government areas just some weeks ago, and even some days back. We've had in Taraba, we've had in Yobe, we've had in Zamfara. And majority of these attacks are in communities whose major source of livelihood is farming. So I'd like your take on this ministry. What do you think Senator Kyari can do different to ensure that there is food surplus in Nigeria? In the year 2023, we witnessed food scarcity and also a surge in the prices of food. Some over 100%, some over 150% increase in the prices of food. Mr. Atiku, your take.
I think it's a complex ministry. Yes, the Ministry of Agriculture, all the problem I just mentioned, whether it's the health systems, whether it's the agriculture system, the education system, security and defense, they all think into this ministry. I mean, rightfully you said it. A lot of people are displaced in their communities, meaning that they can't farm. And for those that are even farming, some of them are farming under the cover of fears. I think it's important to mention that. But for the ministry itself, its mandate is simple. It's to support farmers in any way. Now, the big question is this: how do you support farmers? You support farmers with a lot of things. One, you want to make sure that they get the requisite improved seeds and seed when due. You want to make sure that they get crop protection products when due. You want to make sure that they get every potential support that they can get in terms of equipment. I mean, I always say it, and then the hoes and cutlass belong to the museum. People need to begin to farm in a more productive way. Now, if we reverse a little bit, when COVID was happening, and then everybody was under lockdown, the pandemic that was actually ravaging in Nigeria, a lot of pigs, especially we had a massive one problem around the belt in the southwest region, and most of the people there lost their belongings, right? They lost their pig, they lost their stock. Also, simultaneously, the maize belt they were having bleeds, right? They were being ravaged, and the reason why it's being ravaged is because, and when it happened, government, the support that they need in terms of crop protection product to address this thing did not get them time. Now, most of the people farming in that community have lost their livelihood. Now, simultaneously, also, that was 2020, right? By 2021, we have this massive flooding that stripped a lot of people's belongings. I mean, if you talk to farmers, most of them will tell you, especially around the Benue, those that are very close to the Niger River, Benue has it. The majority of farmers in Nigeria have lost their life apart from the insecurity. Now, the big question is that for somebody that has lost his life, they've lost their resources, they've lost their investment. How did they start farming at that rate? They need to, unfortunately, that support did. That support has not come. And if you look closely at the budget, the proposed budget, you will see very limited action that government has taken to help pull these people back up.
All right, Mr.
Now, for context, if you look at
Mr. Atiku, I would just like for you to land on your thoughts very quickly because we are out of time.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I need you to land on your thoughts. Just finish your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I would just say that it's quite unfortunate what farmers are going through. I hope that when the final details of the budget comes in, we will find some reports. I mean, we can give farmers so that they can get back to the farms and start actually producing the way they used to produce, the way they want to produce, and then hopefully that will help address the issue of food insecurity.
All right, we are actually out of time. I would have loved to ask you, your take. We had the failure. Some people consider it a failure of the Anchors Borrower Scheme, in which farmers are defaulting to repay back their loans. That is one scheme people have continued to ask questions about. And if we do not actually look into that particular program, that particular scheme, we might have a repeat, a pattern of what had happened in the past. Femi.
Yes, and we'd like to say many things to really talk about, really. Maybe in the coming days, financing of the deficit, 18 trillion naira is projected that we will raise in revenue. By the way, initially out of 27 trillion naira, initially proposed by the government, when 18 trillion naira is the proposal for the revenue, what happens to the 9 trillion naira? Are we supposed to finance that? And of course, many persons say we'll go borrowing again, while actually the projection is to even use the 45%, almost half of our revenue, if not more than that, to finance the budget. But then we'll still hope we'll have Mr. Atiku in the coming days to look and shed more light on this for us. Mr. Atiku is a research and impact evaluation associate, University of Bristol. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me on the program. Thank you so much.
And Happy New Year to you.
Yeah.
Happy New Year also, yes.
Thank you very much. And of course, this is where we pull the brakes today. We want to sincerely thank you for being part of this program today. The first one for the week, for the month of January, and for the year 2024. You guys are really the MVP. Please do well to follow us on our social media platforms on Instagram, on X, and on Facebook at Western Spring Television. And of course, our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. Western Spring Television is on channel 190 on Star Times DTT. Thank you for being part of the program. Femi Ojo is my name. God bless Nigeria. And of course, we won't end this show without giving a big shout out to the number one.
Yes, today is his birthday.
Yes.
Talk of Dr. Femi Adefila is the Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of Felicia Daniels Communications Limited, owners of Rave 91.7 FM, and also, of course, this platform, Western Spring Television. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, boss.
I'd actually sang him a song, but I'm not good. My voice is
really but I can help you. We sing for fun. Happy birthday to you.
All right.
Happy birthday to you.
I'm giving him the moral.
Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you. All right.
Yeah.
Hip, hip, hip.
Hooray! He's not the only person. We've got Okoyemi Oni also celebrating his birthday today, and one of our directors, Anibaba, also celebrating his birthday today. Triple celebration it is.
Many persons are born on the first day of the year.
Yeah. Really. I want to really know how it feels. Maybe I'll have to have my child on the first day of the year to know how it feels.
Here we go.
But then, my name is Evelyn Ohiola. Have for yourself a restful day because work begins tomorrow.
Bye-bye.